So I hope all of you are as much inspired as I am. Every conversation and every interaction with several of you have been absolutely fascinating. All right, without a further ado, I would like to take you on to the next part of the conference. Just keeping it between us, I started thinking what is the best way to introduce our next speaker. Then I decided to reach out to get some insight about him. Okay, not his wife. I did not check with his wife, who's amongst us. I asked ChatGPT, and here is its response. This is what ChatGPT said. Literally, verbatim. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Ramakrishnan, an accomplished researcher and expert in the field of generative AI. With over a decade of experience in academia and industry, Rama has been at the forefront of exploring the possibilities of machine learning, natural language processing, and computer vision to create innovative solutions for various industries. Rama has made significant contributions to the development of generative AI models and their application in real-world scenarios, ranging from content creation and advertising to healthcare and finance. His research has been published in leading journals and presented at prestigious conferences around the world, earning him recognition and respect from his peers. Apart from his research, Rama is also a passionate advocate for intentional entrepreneurship and using technology for social impact. He's actively involved in mentoring startups and entrepreneurs, helping them turn their ideas into viable businesses that create positive change in their communities. Please join me in welcoming Ramakrishnan to the stage as he shares his insights on the latest trends and challenges in generative AI and its potential for intentional entrepreneurship.
So that was a very kind introduction. I was like, I want to meet this guy. Who is this guy? Because most of it is not true, as you have guessed. Okay, so I think some of you probably have played with ChatGPT a few times. Others may actually be using it every single day, perhaps more regularly than you floss. And yet others may be using it to actually build applications and you're actually programming into it, right? So given the the potentially vast range of prior knowledge of GPT that's in this room, what I thought I would do was just spend a few minutes making sure that we all have a shared understanding of how it actually works. So specifically, what I want to do is I want to walk through sort of a lightning introduction to when you pop a question into ChatGPT, what is the exact process by which it gives you the answer back? Because I think that's foundational to everything that follows. Okay? So at the most simplest level, ChatGPT is a mathematical model. And for the geeks amongst us, it uses a deep neural network inside the hood, but that's actually not all that relevant. It's a mathematical model. It was trained on 30 billion sentences of text, extracted from the internet and a whole bunch of books. And it was trained on these sentences to do one thing, but to do that one thing extremely well. And that was to predict the next word in a sentence, given the prior part of the sentence. So for example, you give it the cat sat on the, and if it predicts spaceship, you wrap it on the knuckles and say bad. But if it predicts cat, you say nice job, just like training a dog. But you do this on 30 billion sentences, you do it repeatedly. And by the end of it, it gets really good at predicting the next word, as you might expect. Okay? And so once you train it on these things, it can do something extremely useful and not very well understood, which is you give it any sentence, like the cat sat on the, it'll actually calculate this table in real time. Okay? It calculates this table, given the phrase. Now, what does this table have? So each word in the English dictionary is a row in this table. So you can see on the left that it only has two columns. The left column is every word in the English dictionary. And the column on the right tells you roughly what % of the time in those 30 billion sentences did that particular word in the dictionary actually follow the phrase that you put into ChatGPT. So what % of the time did the word mat showed up after the phrase the cat sat on the? And what % of the time did the word, what do I have here? The fridge. What percent of the time did the word fridge show up? By the way, if you folks have seen YouTube cat videos, you will know there are lots of cats sitting on fridges. So it's not unexpected that such a thing would happen from the data. Okay? So with this table, ChatGPT can basically auto-complete the next word. You give it any sentence, right? Makes perfect sense. So you take a sentence, you put it in. It can actually pick the most plausible next word, which in this example is, of course, the word mat. Cat sat on the mat. But it doesn't have to pick the most plausible. It can pick something else. It can actually sample from this table. Because the table tells you how often something is going to show up after the phrase. It can say, you know what, I'm going to pick fridge once. I'm going to pick spaceship some other times. But the point is, every time it samples, a different word might pop up. Okay? And that's why when you and I put a phrase into ChatGPT, the exact same question, you may get different answers back. Or if you put the same question in the morning versus the evening, you'll get a different answer back. That's because it's sampling from this table, right? Now, of course, the more likely words are going to show up more often, right? And the less likely words are going to show up less often. So the cat sat on the aardvark is probably never going to show up, right? So that's the basic mechanism by which it produces the next word. Now, we talked about the fact that this is what gives it the ability to generate multiple alternative sort of endings to any starting point. And this will come in very handy later on. So we have seen how it generates the next word. We can take this capability and very trivially change it to a capability where it can produce pages and pages of text. It can actually write a whole novel. And the idea is actually really simple. So you take something, the starting phrase, and it's, of course, called a prompt, much like our middle school and high school essays for our kids. So you give it the prompt, such as, say, 4*7, which, as you folks know, is the starting of the Gettysburg Address. You give it ChatGPT. What does it do? It actually uses this table thing to create the next word, right? It calculates the table that we saw earlier, and then picks a word from it, samples. And let's say it gives you the word years, because it's finding the most plausible word, right? And now comes the key trick. It takes the thing that it just generated, and then it appends it to what you gave it initially. So if you gave it 4*7, it takes the years and appends it. Okay? And as far as it's concerned, once it appends, it's just yet another sentence. You feed it back in, and you get the next word, ago. You get the idea. You can keep doing this for a while. And it keeps on doing it for a while. It all happens, obviously, at like lightning speed. And then at some point, it says, OK, I'm going to stop. Okay? And we do have some control over the stopping condition. Okay? But basically, by including things like it'll find a period, it'll find a space, it'll find the starting apostrophes, it'll do everything, because it's just finding the next word. So this is what gives it the ability to take this repeatedly generate the next word, is the core capability of taking an arbitrary sentence and producing the Gettysburg Address, or writing a novel, and so on and so forth. Okay? So we all have to remember, fundamentally, when you put a question in, regardless of how magical the answer appears to be, it's doing nothing more than predicting the next word repeatedly. Okay? And if you keep this in mind, a lot of its perplexing behavior will actually become less perplexing. So, all right. So remember, when you ask a question, this loop of finding the next word may run thousands of times before the answer comes out. And by the way, when you type in ChatGPT, you know how it seems to be typing the response slowly? That's just a UX trick. It actually already knows the full thing. They make it look as if it's typing to give you the impression that it's human. Okay, they're just messing with you. Just remember that. Okay, so what does GPT stand for? G stands for generative, because it's generating words. P, because it was pre-trained on those 30 billion sentences. And T, because the particular kind of neural network it uses is something called the transformer, right? GPT, that's it. Okay, now I've glossed over a lot of details, important and actually elegant technical details, and some non-technical details. So if you're curious about it, I have like this 100-page deck on LinkedIn. Please check it out if you're interested. Okay, so now ChatGPT is an example of a family of AI models called large language models. And basically what these are all next word prediction models. That's it. You give it some text, they predict the next word. Okay, that's what makes a model a large language model. Okay, the fact model is obvious, language obvious, large because 30 billion sentences, and therefore you need a huge neural network to process those 30 billion sentences. End of story. That's why it's a large language model. And as you folks know, ChatGPT is not the only game in town. So we have ChatGPT, we have Google Bard, we have Anthropic Claude, we have Bing. This goes on, and this list is going to rapidly expand with the days to come. Okay, so from this point on, I'm going to use the word ChatGPT and LLM sort of interchangeably for large language model. So because we may as well get cool with the terminology, right? So, all right. So let's start with the first important question, given this sort of shared understanding. I'm an executive. What should I do with this thing? How can I use it? Should I sit and wait on the sidelines? Should I actually try something? What should I do? Right? This is something that I get asked all the time. So you have to remember one thing. ChatGPT, of course, can do amazing things, and we have seen those in our own experience. We have seen it on the internet. Right? It can write Seinfeld episodes, it can write poetry, it can explain jokes, and so on and so forth. And it is affecting daily lives already, right? Just have to open the New York Times and you see all these people doing it for crazy things. And there are some very touching real examples where this person says, as someone with dyslexia, I have found that ChatGPT has been instrumental in helping me overcome challenges and improve my communication skills. I couldn't tell you how much this means to me. Real impact, right? No question. However, you have to remember one thing, okay? It can get simple things wrong, okay? So let's say you can actually try it right now. You can go into, well, don't do it right now because, I'll lose your attention. Do it afterwards. You can go into ChatGPT and say, what is the fifth word of this sentence? Simple question. What is the fifth word? Okay, I counted. The word word is the fifth word. Correct? You asked ChatGPT this question. You know what the answer is going to be? Not the correct answer. It gave me is as the right answer. So this thing which people talk in hushed tones as like the future coming of artificial general intelligence cannot count. So it's sort of brilliant one moment, dumb the next. And you have to remember that. Because when we meet a human being who's really brilliant, we sort of automatically assume they're going to be brilliant in lots of things. Do not make that assumption. You're basically anthropomorphizing ChatGPT. Don't do it. Cardinal sin. Okay? It's just a model that's predicting the next word. So given this, and oh, by the way, it makes stuff up. And you already see with Sunita's attempted asking it. I did something similar this morning, by the way, but it was a little bit more targeted, right? So I said, list all the awards that Professor Ramakrishnan of MIT has won. Obviously, I'm trying to corner it by priming it with this award thing, right? So it says, I have to get my glasses. It starts out innocently enough. I'm sorry, but as a language model, I don't have access to real-time information. However, I can tell you that Professor Ramakrishnan is a highly accomplished researcher and professor at MIT, so far not entirely untrue, with numerous achievements and accolades to her name. Some of her notable accomplishments include being named a fellow of the American Physical Society. Sorry, physicists, for stealing your thunder. Being awarded something exceptional undergraduate teaching, and best of all, being elected to the National Academy of Sciences in 2021.
Get ready to receive the award.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe it's predictive. I wish. I want to meet this guy. So anyway, it makes stuff up. And by the way, the research community refers to it euphemistically as it hallucinates. Nonsense. It's just making stuff up. Hallucination gives it a veneer of research sophistication. You should strip it away. It's making stuff up. So, all right. It also doesn't really understand the world. So here's an example where we say, okay, how can a fund manager influence share prices? It says if the market price is high, the fund manager can remove shares, reducing supply, and thus push the price down. And people ask me, should we be using ChatGPT for trading? So more generally, it may generate problematic output, okay? So in particular, it has all these problems, right? The output can either be just inaccurate, as we saw, or it could be inappropriate, right? It could be offensive content, biased content, toxic content. The tone of it may be wrong for your particular company. It may be using IP-protected data, which means that you're at risk of infringement. The list goes on. It's a long list, okay? So given all this, what should you do? That's really the question. So the most important thing to remember, even if you don't remember anything else from this talk, is that do not use LLMs in any sort of automated fashion. Super dangerous, right? Literally, your reputation is on the line if you do that. Do not use it in automated fashion. you must have a human, if you want to use it, and I encourage you to use it in certain cases, which we'll get to, you must have a human in the loop to make sure that you can check and fix the output. Okay? Without the human in the loop, very dangerous. That's sort of the bad news. The good news is that this sort of need to have a human in the loop suggests sort of a way to think about what is the right kind of application I should use it for, right? So my rule of thumb, after looking at a whole bunch of use cases, is that when the cost of detecting and fixing an error, is way less than the cost of creating the thing in the first place, use it. Right? It's sort of the proverbial, when the Jacquard loom was invented back during the Industrial Revolution, 100 weavers were replaced by one loom operator. That's basically the use case. Okay? Of course, it has massive work and economy impacts, right? Which, if we have time, we'll get to. But that's the lens you should apply. Cost of checking, super cheap compared to the cost of creating. Right? That's sort of the yardstick. Now, so what that means is that any task you look at, you can see where it falls on this continuum. Right? You can look to the left where the cost of checking is super cheap compared to the cost of creating. What are some examples? Writing simple programs. Because if you write a simple program, guess what? Even if it's wrong, it's okay because you're going to check it. You're going to try to get it to run. And there's a whole infrastructure around checking programs, running them, testing them, and so on and so forth. You just piggyback on it. Similarly, if you're doing creative work, hey, you're not worried about the truth. Knock yourself out, have fun. Which is why Hollywood is embracing this thing like crazy, right? Now, if e-commerce product descriptions, great, companies are using it already, right? They give it like the dry description, it comes up with a beautiful flowery description, right? Again, very easy. Similarly, ad copy, marketing copy, things like that. These are all perfect use cases, and this is the sweet spot of LLM experimentation that's going on right now, and if you can absolutely try it. Right? Because you will get massive productivity boosts by doing that. Now, here, many people that I speak to are very concerned about data privacy, confidentiality, and so on. If we use these things, we are sending our data into OpenAI. Is that safe? Very legitimate concerns. And OpenAI and Microsoft are doing something to sort of allay your concerns, and they have a path. But the other thing you can do is, as of 2 weeks ago, there are some really good open source alternatives. So you can literally have your team download it and just play with it within your own premises. Right? That's very possible. I could not have made this claim 1 month ago. Okay? So just remember that. Now, by the way, this writing simple program thing is already very widespread. Right? And the folks in the room who are into software development, you know exactly what I mean, right? It's sort of like what this famous science fiction author once said, the future is already here, it's just unevenly distributed. So using LLMs to write code is already here. If it doesn't hit you, you're in the wrong part of the distribution. So it is so widespread that people tell me that there is a dramatic impact, right? Even professional developers, on how long it takes them to do stuff, right? Now, there is apparently a 55% faster ability to code with GitHub Copilot. And this study, because it is basically published by the vendor who creates these things, you got to be a little skeptical. But the MIT economics department did like a test and control study, and they actually confirmed this hypothesis, that it's actually a 50% better ability to ship features fast. So if your software development teams are not using this, you're missing out on a massive productivity boost. You're missing out on a massive time to market advantage. So it's almost like the 0th order thing your team should be doing is using LLMs for coding. Pop quiz. How do you think OpenAI releases features at such an incredible rate? Yeah, exactly. They're using ChatGPT to write the code for ChatGPT. It's not a joke. I literally mean it. That's how you get the exponential increase in the feature rate. So now let's just switch gears and talk about the entrepreneurial ecosystem. Okay? So, fundamentally, there is a gold rush underway right now to build AI co-pilots for essentially every aspect of knowledge work and to infuse it into every piece of enterprise software. Right? This gold rush is well underway as we speak. And this is just like a quick snapshot of the Y Combinator 23 batch, right? Full of, like everybody's doing generative AI. It's incredible. Obviously, Microsoft and Google have already announced these features in their office productivity suites. That's already underway. Amazon has announced Amazon Bedrock, so they're supporting LLM capabilities right now. So this train is already chugging along nicely. It's not the future, it's right now. Now, AI copilots for more complex workflows in specific industry verticals are being built right now, and that's actually a huge opportunity for a lot of the people in the room. So, and I'll get to that in a second. Here's one example where we have this thing here. This is an app, Spellbook, which is basically meant to replace lawyers and paralegals, right? The idea is that you have a contract, you just send this to an email address, and it comes back and says, yeah, it looks good, or it comes back and says, well, you got to push back on these 3 or 4 things. Okay? How well is it going to do, given that it's literally predicting the next word one at a time? Who knows? But it's going to be sort of a pretty confident bullshitter. Both are true, right? You need to be very careful. So you have to remember that. Now, these copilots may have one or more sort of vertical GPTs built into them, based on vertical proprietary data, which again is going to be a source of competitive advantage for folks in the room. So Bloomberg released Bloomberg GPT, based on crunching 4 decades, 40 years of financial documents. I talked about the 30 billion sentences used by OpenAI, right? Imagine 40 years of financial documents being fed into the maw of the beast, right? That's Bloomberg GPT. It's going to be highly attuned to financial questions. And this is going to continue in every vertical. And by the way, and this is really important to understand, these LLMs are not going to be standalone. For them to be used in an enterprise setting, they have to be embedded into very complex workflows, right? Drug discovery, claims review, all complex business workflows. You need to embed them. It is just sort of one thing. All the other stuff has to be in place. And it has to be wrapped with pre-processing, post-processing, security, reliability, all the usual stuff we have to worry about when we build software, right? This is just a small thing. Don't let the raisin distract you from the rest of the cake. It's really important. And these models will ingest and produce multimodal data, not just text anymore. GPT-4 can already process images, right? You can show a picture of what's in your fridge. It'll tell you what the recipe is for things in the fridge. But if you look at it very carefully, it might use an ingredient that's not in the fridge. Why? Confident bullshitter. Just remember that. Always check, always check. So, oops. All right, here we go. They will leverage external tools. They will leverage search engines. They'll leverage calculators, simulators, any special purpose software you have. Your proprietary data, which is not known to anybody, it'll leverage all those things. And guess what? It's already here. It's called ChatGPT plugins. And pop quiz, you can use Dash to write the code to build ChatGPT plugins. Yes. Exactly. That's why they're being produced at such a rapid rate. They will be agentic. And what I mean by that is, instead of just asking them a question, you get an answer back, you can actually you can give it a goal, saying, I want you to research a travel plan to go to Paris, wife, 2 kids, blah, 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 blah. And then it'll do like a 10-step action. It'll figure out what the 10 actions are. It'll execute each step, report back on the results, it'll give you the final thing. Now, you have to check every little thing to make sure that those places actually exist. But it can be done. And there is software already for that. By the way, the developers in the room, if you're not already using LangChain, you must start using LangChain because it'll blow your mind. Okay, so all this said, we don't know what the true killer apps will be. It's sort of like when the iPhone was first released, did any of us guess Uber was going to show up? Of course not. If you did, you're wasting your time here. You should be a hedge fund manager. So unexpected new killer uses are going to appear in the coming months as a sort of 1,000 LLM flowers are going to bloom as this wild wave of startup experimentation really takes off, right? We just won't know what the killer use cases are. Now, this all sounds great and frankly a little scary. How can I participate in the revolution, right? That's really the key question. So if you're already building an app on top of an LLM, congratulations. Well done. I love the fact that you have swung into action already rather than staying on the sidelines, because the 0th order bit is do not be on the sidelines, be in the fray. Because otherwise you won't know how to pivot. So, all right, now if you're thinking about what to build, here are some guidelines. Recall from earlier that every app in knowledge work will have an AI copilot inside. Well, guess what? Because for every vertical process, the depth of process knowledge and end user knowledge, right, the depth is so high, so much of it is required to build these copilots. The LLM vendors of the world, the OpenAIs of the world, they just won't have that much interest in building them. It's just too vertical, too deep. They have bigger fish to fry. That is your opportunity. That is your opportunity. So And I also said that they won't be standalone. They'll need to be embedded into workflows. Workflows are basically just detailed business processes, right? So if you actually understand the business process in a particular vertical inside and out, you have a massive advantage. You can actually build a Copilot with your knowledge of the business process. And of course, there are a huge number of processes already. They're just waiting for like an AI infusion, right? Drug discovery, industrial design, insurance claim review. What I suggest is look for boring industries where you know a lot and build an AI Copilot for those industries. If you go after the shiny industries, too much competition. And another potential edge you have is that you will have access to vertical domain-specific data. Keep going? All right, thanks. Okay, you have access to domain-specific data. So you can fine-tune an off-the-shelf LLM with such data and improve it dramatically. The data is the edge. Your knowledge of the business process is the edge. Your knowledge of how an LLM works, commodity. So here is an LLM fine-tuned by Google just on medical data. It's called PalmMed2. It scored 85% or something on the US MLE exam. For the doctors in the room, I think you understand that's actually not an insignificant thing, right? So it basically cleared the bar exam after being fine-tuned on medical data. But this may not be enough. To maintain your edge over the inevitable competition, you should really think hard about creating a data and UX flywheel. And what I mean by that is, typically what happens is that you get more data, right? You get data, you fine-tune it, you get much better output as a result of your fine-tuning, you get more users. These users, and this is the key part, they give you more feedback as they're interacting with the system. And as they give feedback, that feedback data becomes the new data that you add to your original data, and that makes the LLM even better. So you create this nice cycle, and if you can rev the cycle faster than everybody else, you'll crush them. They won't be able to keep up. So the UX should be designed, however, to let users give you the feedback super easily, not like a special thing. And by the way, the mid-journey system, which is used for text to image, does it, and you don't even realize it's doing it. It's very clever. But you can do it. Right? And this is the key step. And boom, you keep on doing it continuously. Impossible to catch up if you keep doing this. And by the way, when you go to ChatGPT and you have this little thumbs up, thumbs down thing, I don't know how many of you have tried it. Congratulations, you have just been feeding data, training data to ChatGPT. That's what's going on. So that's basically what's going on. This whole loop is going on all the time. All this said, be very paranoid. Because the ChatGPT plugin that's 80% as good as your product, but vastly cheaper, may just eat your lunch if you're not careful, just because of the ease of creating these things. And the second thing, and this actually is the more worrisome thing, if you create something on top of one of the LLMs, and the product really takes off, and everybody's like, wow, that's an amazing product, guess what they're going to do? They're going to package it as part of the core ChatGPT offering, and then give it either free or with a very small price point, and you're killed. This playbook has been followed by Microsoft gloriously for many, many years, right? What was the thing, the print preview thing was a separate app at some point. Then it became print preview, just a little thing on the menu, right? The same thing is going to unfold, so you have to be very, very careful. So finally, I've been using ChatGPT in an ad hoc fashion. Is there a systematic way that I can get better at it, right? That's something that people ask. So yes, say hello to prompt engineering. I love this quote. This guy says, the hottest new programming language is English. For all the non-coders out there, it's wonderful, right? The English lit majors, finally my time has come. And so, but seriously, prompt engineering is actually worth learning, and there are numerous resources online, right? I've listed a few here. Learnprompting.org is a good one, but just learn it. There are specific tricks you can use to get incredible output from ChatGPT. The thing is, a change in a single word to the input will make the difference between good and really fantastic. So it's worth learning these tricks. And then finally, you can ask Dash to teach you how to prompt ChatGPT. Yes, amazingly, it's possible. You can ask it to teach you how to ask it. So I have this other framework called ABCDEF. Its redeeming feature is the fact you can actually remember it. But I don't have time for it, but I'm happy to talk about it or send slides to people later on. And if you're curious what other people are doing with ChatGPT, share GPT. Check it out. You will get a voyeuristic peek into what else is going on. So in closing, I just want to say that on most days I feel like this. There is this long German word, which means the feeling that the single greatest scientific discovery in human history is underway. However, everyone is still going about their day like things are still normal. That's what I feel most of the time with this stuff, okay? But I'll be perfectly candid, not going to lie. On some days, I feel like this. I feel like this massive thing is coming. It's going to disrupt the economy, particularly for jobs in which the cost of creating versus the cost of checking. That equation holds true. And there's going to be a lot of short-term disruption. I have zero doubt about it, unfortunately. It's happening. It's not a prediction. I'm literally reporting what's going on. So that's what really makes me give pause.